So Janos is a millennial, as you can see, young guy in fintech who is recognized as a top 35 global fintech leader, which is very, very impressive. His expertise is on new regulatory considerations raised by the development of fintech. He's got a passion and a drive that you'll hear because he's founded Fintech Hong Kong. And as you know, Hong Kong is a major fintech hub. So to actually have created a leadership platform where you're recognized is quite the achievement. He'll talk to us a little bit about what's happening in Asia in the fintech scene, particularly in Hong Kong. We know that you're a part of the, I think it's called the World Fintech Forum, and he'll talk a little bit about that today. But he's best known for co-founding the Fintech Book, which ranked on Amazon's top 0.01%. So it really shot up very quickly. And you should be really proud of yourself because that's not an easy feat. So congratulations. We're really happy to have you. And we're looking forward to hearing a number of things. We want to hear how the Fintech Book started, what the inception was, and then you can talk to us about, what you're currently doing, some of the projects that you're doing. And so let's first start with the Fintech Book.
Sure.
Yeah, how did that happen?
Yeah, sure. Like I said, thank you very much for the introduction. The Fintech Book is an idea that both Suzanne and I had about, like I said, 15 months ago. I think Suzanne, so I'm based in Hong Kong. I used to work in the UK setting up a challenger bank, and Suzanne is based in London. She was the founder and CEO of Fintech Circle, which is a angel group on the fintech space. Now, when Suzanne and I met each other, we both started our career in our journey into fintech, and we both realized that there was one thing missing, which was the capacity of reading and learning about fintech in a single source and volume. Back then, and like I said, it was 2 years ago, most of the knowledge was highly fragmented across blogs and industry reports. But therefore, you couldn't go on a single source and learn about fintech. So Suzanne and I looked at each other and we said, can we write the book on fintech? And it was fairly difficult, mainly because fintech is a highly wide industry and broad industry. And we quickly realized that no one could have the complete knowledge on fintech as an individual. And so we thought, okay, given that limitation, how can we still write a book on fintech? And step two was, should we get subject experts on that area, recognized name that have been around and have shared their thought already on fintech and just put them in a volume. And likewise, we saw this as an interesting approach, but this was fairly limited and limiting in that we already know the thought leadership of certain key individuals, especially 2 years ago. And therefore we thought, look, Suzanne and I, just like many people around the world, we do have a say on fintech. We do have an opinion and we do have an expertise. And as a result, let's crowdsource the content. Let's provide a voice to every single person that wished to participate in the Fintech Book.
Okay.
And let's democratize that process. So the way that we've done that was by crowdsourcing the content and making it easy for initial offer to submit something. And that something was really 300 words to be sent over to us so that we can post it online. And then people can vote for it, upvote or downvote it. As a result, not only was the barrier to entry to participate in the book fairly low, but second of all, the selection process was highly democratic. The abstract with the most vote typically showed that there was interest in that article, and therefore that in the future people would like to read it. And this allowed us to do a first cut. So we had about 190 applicants into the Fintech Book. And based on the voting process, we were able to select about 110. And then Suzanne and I, as editors, we decided to go on and then keep the best 60, which were now in the Fintech Book. Mm-hmm. Doing that really meant that we had to go back to the offer and have them to write 3,000 to 4,000 words. and then compile this into a single volume. So the Fintech book now stands about 300 pages, contribution from authors in 60 authors, 12, 15 countries, and that's spread across 10 chapters.
Wow. That's something, it's history, because I don't think anyone's crowdsourced a book like that before. Or have they?
Yeah, no, so it's a fair point. It came with its own challenges. I think, as we all know, like the more people involved, the more difficult it is to coordinate. But surprisingly, it was a fairly smooth process, even though it was highly work intensive. It was a fairly smooth process in that there's a really strong community that wanted to share their thoughts on fintech.
Right.
And this was very clear. So we benefited from that. And the second part is we had a chance to work with an excellent publisher, which was Wiley, that also gave us a lot of support. So even though, Suzanne and I edited the book, it was a team of about 10 to 12 people at the back that did the editing as well, at different stages. And on our side, we had about 6 staff doing it. On the Wiley side, I think it was about 3-4 people as well. Plus, then there was 2 of us. So clearly, a big effort, and part of the credit should really go to, the team at Wiley and our team as well, because without them, we wouldn't have been able to coordinate this whole project.
Great. So if you haven't gotten the book yet, you can get it at Amazon. You can get it at most booksellers. Where can people get the book?
So the book is found, so we launched in the US and North America in about 4 weeks ago. So you could still order it from the UK, but now there's like direct stock in the US. Things are going very, very well in the US. So you can go to Amazon, yes. If you're in Europe, I think Amazon UK is your best source. If you're based internationally, there's a website called thebookdepository.com, which has also the book, but the great thing about that website is that it has free international shipping. So it won't hit you with another ridiculous fee on shipping. So yeah, if anyone is outside the US and Europe, check out bookdepository.com, as the shipping is free. So it will be really your best way of getting it.
Great. And now you're involved, you're in Hong Kong.
Yes.
And Hong Kong is a hub. It's a fintech hub. I'm curious, why did you choose Hong Kong? Because obviously you're not, I'm assuming natively, you're not, from Hong Kong, or you could be. You never know.
Well spotted.
So why Hong Kong, and what's different about Hong Kong's fintech scene versus London, for example, where you have experience?
Yeah, sure. So the story of me coming to Hong Kong is a long one to some extent. My family always had ties in Asia, whether it was my mom who went to China in '76 to work and my dad in Vietnam in '89. So Asia was not foreign from that perspective. As for myself, I studied my corporate financial law master at Hong Kong U Law School, and that's when I really established my knowledge in fintech. So my research paper back in 2012 was a policy paper for the Chinese government, where essentially I wrote that the whole shadow banking sector will go into peer-to-peer lending in China, as well as develop a real-time regulatory regime, which is now to some extent what we call RegTech. On the back of that LLM, I went to the UK, worked on setting up a bank, and at the time, the narrative to be a fintech hub was very simple. Essentially, if you're a financial center, if you have people, if you have money, you'll be a fintech hub. And looking around the world, Hong Kong was the third largest financial center in the world. It had people, it had money, it wasn't yet a fintech hub. So for me, it was very clear that Hong Kong would become a fintech hub. And the second thing I knew is the amount of innovation currently happening in Asia is highly interesting. And this will really show the way forward. And as a result, I did the most to come back in Hong Kong, set up Fintech HK. And then this led me to do more ventures, including the Supercharger, which is a fintech accelerator. I'm just going to charge the laptop because I see my battery flashing. So
yeah, sure. Happens to everyone.
So yeah, and that's really it. And I think, since then I was right. It was a move we did two years ago, and now we start to seeing that the center of gravity of the world in fintech is moving east more and more, and that's great because there you go. I think it's charging. Yeah, and that's really great. So really, really happy of having made that choice. And down the line, Asia is becoming almost a playground for that. So that's really outstanding.
Great. Okay, and if somebody wanted to enter into that market, if somebody wanted to enter into the fintech Asian market and they're in North America or they're in Europe, what kind of advice would you give them? And is that something that you do? Do you facilitate people coming to Asia?
So, I mean, there's two elements to that, right? The first one is Asia is 25 countries and 25 sets of behavior, 25 sets of regulation. And as a result, whilst Asia is far geographically from North America, from Americas in general, or Europe, it might seem as a unified block, Asia, but really it's not. And this has a lot of impact because it has also different state of development, going from highly developed countries like Hong Kong all the way to more emerging economies like Vietnam, Philippines, Myanmar. So I think step one is, what would be your market? Now, Hong Kong has a benefit of being a gateway into Asia and typically into China. And a lot of companies are using Hong Kong or Singapore as their dispatch hub to scale their operation across. Because of the fragmented market, because of different behaviors and regulation, it is challenging for an early stage company to scale into the Asian market. And as a result, there's different ways of doing it. But we have created a program which is called the Supercharger. And the Supercharger is a fintech accelerator done for early stage and late stage company. The late stage company actually joined the program. It's a 12-week program to know how to better scale into the Asian market. The company we had raised between 5 million and 150 million US already. And the reason why that makes a lot of sense is we all know that the Chinese market, for example, is very difficult to crack. And you'll need proper funding and strategy to do so. And there's also a common sense approach, which is really if you're two-man band or two founders in a startup and you're based in Europe, it will really stretch the whole team to come over in Asia. You need slightly more resources to be able to do that. If anything, you need at least a local team. We help with that. So typically the company is coming over, we have a space, it's the floor of a building. We can provide them, an office space, strategy, staffing, recruitment, et cetera, by just looking and tapping into a local network to help the company focus on business growth as opposed to operational matter in the first 3 months. So that's typically what we've done. The Supercharger had 161 applicants from around the world. We had our program being launched between January and April. So now we finished our demo day, and our companies, have gone on to keep on growing. So just in terms of scope of companies, on the early stage side, we had a company called Neat. They provide digital banking services to students, a little bit like a neobank for the millennial generation out of Hong Kong. Another company is called Amareos, social sentiment analytics for investment decision. The third one was funding societies, peer-to-peer lending for SMEs. The fourth one was Gatecoin, which is a regulated cryptocurrency exchange that provides infrastructure solution for the financial services industry. Mm-hmm. And then on the late stage side, we had Microcred, a microfinance company that is about 10 years old, and they raised 150 million US. WeCash is a Chinese company, 5-year-old. They have 40 million customer, and they do alternative credit scoring. Echo, Indian company, 4-year-old peer-to-peer payments, and they're growing at a rate of 500,000 customer months. And the last one is Jade Payment, which is a closed loop, open loop card solution, either for corporates or events that allow you to do just better payment.
That's incredible. I've heard of a couple of those. So in particular, WeCash. So okay, good for you. That's really impressive. Because they're now becoming, recognizable logos, right? Which is always important.
No, it is. I mean, WeCash is one of those companies, and it was part of the narrative of the supercharger is to actually help companies to scale into China, but also Chinese companies to scale out of. And it was great for us to have WeCash as an example because they're currently looking at expanding into the Indian market as well as the Indonesian market. So yes, and I do have to say that the very first batch we had at the supercharger on the early stage side and on the late stage side, outstanding entrepreneurs beyond great businesses, because this is on what we selected, that batch. Every single team we had is really outstanding as persons, and I think therefore the supercharger has done an amazing job, I think, at helping them, but more importantly, just at identifying them. These would have been anyway successful companies, and we as a supercharger, we could flag them as great companies and give them more visibility. But really outstanding entrepreneurs, so really proud from that perspective of having been able to participate in that growth.
Great. That's wonderful. Does anybody have any questions? You can join in and ask any questions. And if you don't want to join in on camera, you can always type it in the chat. So feel free to join and ask Janos any questions that you might have. So I'm curious about Bitcoin's role in Hong Kong and cryptocurrency, the cryptocurrency scene there in particular. It seems like the government has taken more of a proactive approach. Am I wrong in assuming that? Are they more proactive, you think, than other parts of the world? Or what's happening with that whole cryptocurrency Bitcoin scene in where you are?
So there's different ways of being proactive. Like we can be proactive in a good way and a bad way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Classify which type of proactivity, I would say is a good type of proactivity. The government is technology neutral, but not neutral in a bad sense, in the sense that cryptocurrency is a type of asset. It can be fully traded, and therefore, it opens a way for quite a lot. I'm not a Bitcoin expert. Neither am I a blockchain expert. I think some people do it much better than I do. What I do know is one of our company, Gatecoin, is in that sphere. Mm-hmm. And one of the difficulty they had is, on the bank account opening process. I do believe that this is sort of a difficulty shared around the world for companies that deal in cryptocurrencies when they want to open a bank account with banks. However, it is perhaps true that Hong Kong opening duration time is longer than anywhere else. I think we don't have numbers yet to back it. That's maybe a research that we will look into, just to do sort of a benchmark globally on that and to see if that's the case. Because we're obviously highly focused on our local opening lead time in Hong Kong. And it is always too long for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are always driven by speed and delivery. Anything that slows them down is highly frustrating. And therefore, it would be good to, first of all, understand why is that the case? And also, how does that compare? So that's one of the issues that is, I guess, preventing the growth of the Bitcoin blockchain ecosystem. But in many ways, it's not a too bad one. I mean, I think the government could be much more anti-Bitcoin. So that's not too much of a problem.
Okay. All right. So, you are going to be a part of the world, what's it called?
World Economic
World
Forum.
World Economic Forum, as well as I think that you're also speaking at the fintech world, or is that a part of it? Is that
Oh,
the
so
same
so
thing in
yeah,
Seoul, Korea?
so there's two things. So I'm on the
Yeah.
board of the World Economic Forum, so the WEF. And yes, in Korea they do have an event called World Fintech Forum.
World,
Where I'll
yeah.
be speaking. Yeah, so there's two things, right? There is an event, and then
Yes.
the institution, which is the WEF.
Which is very impressive, which is great. So tell us a little bit about your involvement,
Mhm.
what you're planning on doing, and what you like for us to know, how to get involved.
Yeah. So, I mean, the World Economic Forum is the role here is really on the advisory board, and typically we produce reports. The last report we've done was on SME financing gap and how fintech company can solve that. So that's what we've done, and the report was out. I think it was fairly well received. There's going to be sort of a general frequency of doing that. The second one is the World Fintech Forum, which is an event in Korea from the 2nd to the 4th of June. I'll be speaking about the evolution of banking and retail banking, and my experience doing a challenger bank in the UK was highly useful for that. So I'll be saying how banks went from analog to digital to challenger banks to neobanks to API banks, and now to banking as a platform, and how this is reshaping both the industry but as well the consumer in that sector.
Great, interesting. Okay, does anyone have any questions?
Hi, Janos. Thanks
Hey,
for
how are you?
joining us.
Thank
I
you.
wanted to ask you a question on RegTech. Like,
Sure, go for it.
how is it in regarding to Hong Kong and Singapore? What's the major difference? Is it a situation where it's much more stricter? Do you have more compliance issues, or how does it work in regarding to the similarities or the differences?
Yeah, so I mean, RegTech is, first of all, there's a lack of, in my mind, conceptualization of what RegTech is. So typically, when you ask someone what RegTech is, they will say, AML, KYC, eKYC. When really it's much broader, and it covers, fraud pattern analysis, behavior analysis, digitization of processes, etc., reporting standards, and reporting automation. So it's much broader. In terms of RegTech development in Hong Kong versus Singapore, I think way too early as a market to really differentiate both. If we do accept that regulatory technology is about real-time, proportionate compliance and reporting standards, a regulatory sandbox will fall into that as a category. And Singapore has made a claim of saying Singapore will do a regulatory sandbox. And that's a public announcement. Hong Kong has not yet made that, but it's not to say that the Hong Kong regulators are not proactive in that space. The Hong Kong regulator, so Hong Kong has a different regulatory structure. It's not prudential and consumer focused in the same way that the UK is. It's more product based. So we have a securities regulator, we have a monetary regulator for the banking space, we have an insurance regulator, and then we have a data privacy regulator. So all of these are starting to have fintech contact points, and individually they will be here to help the inquiries of the fintech startups who wish to be regulated and enter the market. Whether you do that through a fintech regulatory sandbox or not. So different stages.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, it's interesting that Singapore has emerged as a RegTech center, and I think that you're seeing companies in the US and in Canada too open up offices who are within the regulatory technology space. They have offices in Singapore, so they're even, I think, acknowledging to some point, that Singapore is sort of emerging as a hub if you will, for regulatory type of technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I said, I don't think yet that Singapore has a lead in Asia, in the sense that, fintech. Look, one of the great thing about fintech, it's very broad, right? So as a result, you can have complementary fintech hubs with different fintech specialty across the region. On the RegTech side, it's a bit different because regulation tends to really cut across.
Yeah.
And yes, I mean, Hong Kong has been a financial standard setter on the regulatory space for the last 20 years. Because Hong Kong has an aura as a successful financial center, and it grew from zero to third financial center in 20 years with the level of expertise we currently have. So Hong Kong does have a very strong play capacity of doing that, mainly just because of the sheer brain trust that you have in Hong Kong from a regulatory standpoint, as well as a standard setting history.
Interesting. Yeah. So I think that RegTech has been given a. Oh, okay. So he's trying to call in. So let me. You'll join for sure. Okay. Okay. Welcome.
Hello.
Dr. Corey. Hello. How are you?
Hello, Miss Fintech.
Fintech. Yeah.
Fintech.
How
are you?
Yeah. I'm fine. Do you have a question for us? Do you have a question for Janos? Do you know what we're talking about? We're talking about the fintech space and pretty much the regulatory portion of that, niche of that. Are you interested in fintech, and would you like to contribute in any way?
Well, I have my own platforms basically, and I'm basically coming in contact with some publishers that like to. They're in conversation with me to publish my own book because it's like Abraham Hicks' Law of Attraction. So it's about frequency and power of love and now, and A Course in Miracles and all that kind of stuff that people have channeled, but in a different way.
Oh, okay, so you saw the Fintech book, and okay, I see where the connection is. Yeah. The interesting thing is that Janos actually crowdsourced his book. So, but that really has nothing. So it has something to do with publishing, but really the topic that we're speaking of is fintech. We're not really speaking about publishing.
Okay,
so
why you're so much into the name or the brand?
Because that's the umbrella that the discussion is.
For example, what I'm trying to say is that there are many people that are totally worried about content, because by the regurgitation of this information age, people have heard everything and they have tried everything. So people keep trying to sell another kind of a platform which is totally empty.
Okay. Right. So we've got other people that wanted to join. Welcome everyone that's coming in. So thank you so much for your comments. And I'm just going to have you go, but you can stay on and listen in. Okay. Thank you so much.
And Dr. Corey, I mean, I got the point of the question. I think there's two elements for it. The first one is, you have your own venture and you wish to publish a book going forward. My advice to you, it's a fairly long process. We do live in a digital age, and we do tend to have shorter and shorter cycle to do something. It took us about 15 months to do the book. To some extent, if you already have your content which is ready to be published, you should expect, especially if you do a physical print, you should expect a 6 to 7 months lead time, and that's fairly conservative. On the content creation side, you might not have joined at the beginning of the conversation, but one of the value the Fintech Book had was it is an actual platform with a real community supporting the content behind. So 190 authors from 37 plus countries, highly split between industry, financial services industry, fintech industry, on the space. And it was really an opportunity for giving to certain authors a voice and a platform to express their opinion. And that opinion is highly valuable in the sense that we were able to cover and talk to the CEO of a bank in Mexico, digital bank in Mexico, of a payment platform in Pakistan, of entrepreneurs in Nigeria, which typically don't have necessarily this expertise. And they typically don't have actually the platform of coming out and speaking about what is happening in their market. And one of the chapter was on fintech hubs. So really do have a look. And, we on Medium or on the Fintech Book website, there's all the abstract posted online that can give you an initial feel of what we mean by fintech and what's the quality of the content there. So please feel free to go online and check it there.
Great. Thank you. Does anyone else want to hop in and ask a question to Janos? Do you have anything else that you'd like to discuss, Janos? Any other thing that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, so for us on, trying to structure the different points. I think I don't know the geographical breakdown of the audience currently, and where is everyone from. But I think it's fair to say that no one is really in Asia at the moment, mainly because it's 6 a.m. and quite a few people would do something at 6 a.m. online in Asia. So I would assume that most of the people are based in North America at the moment on the chat.
I can actually see one person that I know is in Singapore, believe it or not.
All right, so and congratulations for the Singaporean person or the person based in Singapore for joining us. But it still goes that most of the audience would not be Asia based, and part of the message that we should send is yes, I mean have a look at the Fintech Book. It's a great book, of course, but also have a look at Asia. It's very easy for entrepreneurs, industry stakeholders to think that their local hub is the leading hub. And yes, you have a London, but you have so much currently happening in Asia. Massive market, 2 billion people unbanked within the market. There's a $1 trillion opportunity on the SME financing gap. Trade finance is really a critical and crucial element of Asia trade, and fintech would come here and change a lot of things. There's a whole market which has been underserved by banks because they were not bankable before. In other words, not economically viable to be banked, both on the retail space, on the asset management space, on the private banking space. So Asia is coming up fast. And importantly, if you start comparing fintech hubs around the region, every fintech hub has their different story on why they grew. I think the simplicity of the narrative of just saying, I'm a financial center, I have money, I have people, is a bit past now, and the market has much more matured. So on that side, I would say, yeah, keep in mind that, whilst financial brands are global, financial regulation and behavior are highly local. And there's only such a capacity of scaling your fintech startup in the region with a 1-1 replication of your existing business model.
Right. Okay. That's I think that's something that a lot of younger millennials like yourself are very much open to just sort of picking up and moving to Asia to try something like what you just described and taking a look at Asia. So it's a good reminder, that there's a lot happening and that there's a lot of opportunity. And London, New York, Atlanta are not the only, hubs around. So
yeah.
Anna has a question. How do you see P2P lending trend in Hong Kong?
So, peer-to-peer lending in Hong Kong, it was one of the original growth sector in fintech in Hong Kong 2 years ago. And you have a very successful company recently, I think in January, yeah, it was in January, called WeLab, and WeLab raised 160 million US, and it's a peer-to-peer platform based out of Hong Kong. So I think that the peer-to-peer industry in Hong Kong didn't get the same level of government support and regulatory proactivity that what the UK had or the US had. There's different reasons for that. In my opinion, part of this comes from the fact that the US and the UK did face a financial crisis, and therefore the SME financing gap was increased, and we needed to find a policy response for that. And that policy response also meant changing certain regulatory rules to develop peer-to-peer lending. So therefore, the peer-to-peer industry in Hong Kong didn't get the same support and capacity of scaling into larger markets, but also it's cognizant of the fact that Hong Kong is a 7 million people market, and therefore there's a limited add value for regulators or policymakers to spend all their time and energy to try to grow that sector when they can think of bigger fintech opportunity, typically in the B2B space, for the existing financial institutions which are servicing Hong Kong and the region. So different state of growth, and Hong Kong is not necessarily on the forefront of peer-to-peer lending, but I think it both reflects the government appetite as well as the market opportunity.
Okay, that was a great question, Anna. All right, I think we're going to wrap it up.
Sure.
Unless there's anything else that you'd like to add before we leave. Where can people find you? If they wanted to get in touch with you, how can they find you?
So, I mean, the best way is always it's LinkedIn. So, you know, just look me up, Janos Barberis. Feel free to reach out, send a message. And, you know, from there we can pick it up. If anyone is in the region, please let me know next time you come to Hong Kong. It's a good ecosystem, and, you know, a lot has been happening in the last 2 years. A lot of different players, and it's been a beautiful journey to see how Hong Kong has evolved in the last 2 years. Very glad to have been part of it. Much more to come. We come into an age where fintech hubs are connecting themselves. And so Hong Kong is going to be more and more a regional dispatch center and a regional collaborator with other hubs. So, you know, really looking forward for that. And I would really suggest anyone here, if they don't have a business that want to look at Asia, or at least from a personal interest standpoint, have a look at the capacity of Asia of innovating in the fintech space.
Okay. We have another question. Innovation. Does it relate to services provided or products in Hong Kong? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I'll try. I mean, Anna, if let me know if that's correct, but you have two types of innovation. I would say B2B and B2C. And B2C is really consumer facing, and peer-to-peer was an example of a very useful B2C innovation. Hong Kong is not as much on the B2C space. I think it's more on the B2B. Part of it comes from the level of government support. Part of it comes from the fact that you have a lot of banks in Hong Kong which are customers and acquirers of B2B fintech solution. And they will keep on being, because, you know, IT spending in the banking space is at all-time high and always has been for the last 10. So that's the type of innovation that we'll see in Hong Kong, more on the B2B side for the corporates as opposed to the B2B side for the customers.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so yes, thank you. Yeah, so thank you everyone for joining us today. Again, This was part of the Fintech Career Virtual Summit, which you can still catch, believe it or not. This is the last day, it's day 3, but we're going to have the recordings for 90 days. So you can still see this. We're going to post it, and you'll be able to see the recording for another 3 months, as well as day 1, day 2, and day 3. So all days you're going to be able to get all of the recordings in case you missed the live summits. Again, thank you so much. We're going to thank Janos Barberis for joining us, and have a wonderful evening or a wonderful morning wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.